But when you're a kid, when even a teenager, and you're that confused about everything and you have no idea and you're upset for many other reasons, the idea that they put it, let me just finish.
I'm not saying it.
I know, I could see you were ready. I could see you pulling back the bow. And the fact that they put this in their head too much, that's my thing. I compared it once on my show to entrapment.
So
see, there you go.
I disagree. I'm sorry. Is that not the end? Is it? I thought entrapment had a period at the end.
Could I explain it?
Yes.
The FBI got caught basically entrapping some people, which is what they went to people who were. Excuse me, I'm not done.
All right, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. Honestly, that was rude. That was rude. That was rude. Bill, finish. You're explaining how being trans is like being recruited into Al Qaeda.
Well, that's glib and
absolutely 100% glib. Stupid and glib.
It is.
Yes.
Because it's not true. And
right.
You didn't even let me get through the
You're
thing.
right.
And now I got to go.
You're just going to leave? We're in the middle of a debate.
Yeah.
I'm sure many of you have already seen that specific clip, that specific portion of Bill Maher's appearance on Pod Save America, which, if you guys are unaware, is essentially the Obama team doing a podcast, and they act as the mouthpiece for the Obama administration and the direction that he wants the Democratic Party to go. But one of the things that I like to do on this channel, and why it took me so long to make this video about this, is watch the full episode, the full context. And wouldn't you know it, there's actually other segments in this particular podcast that are quite interesting. So of course, we're going to go over when the transes discussion happened, how it caused a total breakdown in communication, and eventually led to Bill Maher leaving this particular podcast episode. But in addition to that, we're going to talk about some other issues just so you can get an idea, an understanding of where the modern Democratic Party is, not only on the transes issue, which we hear a lot about, but in addition to that, where they are on issues like freedom of speech, because guess what? These people are in favor of hate speech restrictions. These people do not care about the founding American principles, no matter how many times they tell you that they're in favor of defending the Constitution from the evil orange man. Now, we're going to break this down, but before we do, I want to say thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So first of all, I do think it's notable that in terms of perception, how this podcast was received, there's 5,700 likes to 2,700 dislikes on this particular episode. And this can be attributed to a couple of things. First and foremost, people seeing the clip and not actually going back to the podcast and rating the podcast itself. But in addition to that, there's a bunch of lefties that also don't like Bill Maher, what Bill Maher stands for. So they're also against what he said, even though it sounds like common sense. I know a lot of people, it's a knee-jerk instinct is to say that the right wing voted this down, but if you look at the comments, a huge portion of them are anti-Bill Maher, and they parrot these ridiculous left-wing talking points, and this is a good peek into the audience that is Pod Save America's audience.
The speech that Vance made to the Germans, not the part about the semi-Nazi party, but the part about free speech was very valid. In my view, they have gone to places in Germany and in England now with free speech that I don't want to live in that country.
Now, in addition to the clip that everybody's seen, which is related to the transes, there's another clip that's not getting nearly enough play, and that, of course, is where they talk about free speech, specifically in European nations, with a focus on the nation of Germany. And the reaction that we get from the podcast host to Bill Maher's reasonable critiques of Germany, his reasonable siding with J.D. Vance, where he criticized the German government for this, is absurd and ridiculous.
But you host a show that's about the value of debate. And one of the two sides no longer, they'll use a debate when it's useful. They'll use politics, normal politics when it's useful, but they'll cast it aside, right? They'll go through Congress when they can. They'll ignore it when they can't. They'll come on your show and make a case when they can, but they'll say you're an evil Marxist and all should be ignored when it's not useful. That's really dangerous.
So it's important for you guys to understand that for most of this episode, for most of this conversation, the podcast host has been going out of his way to praise Bill Maher, to give him credit, to say that he was a huge fan of him all the way back to politically incorrect. But this is really the first instance where I noticed a giant red flag that an issue was coming that was going to divide them. And the setup for this, of course, is where they talk about how, oh, the Republicans are abandoning the process. The Republicans are abandoning engaging in debate. And as many of you know, all of the things that was just said right there could easily apply to the left wing and the Democrats, except instead of calling you a Marxist, they'll call you a Nazi, and the same thing would apply. That being said, this starts to get into free speech in Europe, and what you're going to discover is that, of course, the Pod Save America guy, and again, based on his audience that's ripping Bill Maher apart in the comments of this video, is against freedom of speech.
Very valid, in my view. They have gone to places in Germany and in England now with free speech that I don't want to live in that country. I mean, did you see the 60 Minutes piece on Germany last week?
I didn't.
Really? Is 60 Minutes like too old hat for you?
It's just, I catch it now and again.
Well,
but I'm not like click, click, click. I'm not like waiting for the sound every Sunday like I used to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I watched it every Sunday.
Really?
It wasn't a cool kid.
It
was a lot of Bill Maher in 60 Minutes. and wondering if I was going to get invited to prom. The answer, I was not.
One of the things that I find really interesting is the way that filter bubbles tend to work. Now, 60 Minutes obviously is something that caters to the left wing, to the mainstream, of which the left wing is definitely a part of. This guy is a politics guy. Again, he comes from the Obama tree, and nowhere on his social media feed, nowhere on his viewing diet, does he encounter the 60 Minutes piece where they talk about censorship in the nation of Germany in particular. And so he's completely unaware of it. Now, of course, he tries to, pivot it off to different various jokes. It's a podcast. It's a conversation. That's totally fine. I'm not going to ding him for that. But it is quite interesting that he's not even aware of the idea of what they're doing in these European countries, despite the fact that he's completely aware of other aspects of J.D. Vance's speech when he was in Europe, and he's criticizing them, but he never looked into the claims specifically related to freedom of speech. And remember, he is positioning the Democrats, the left wing, as upholding American values, while the right wing is throwing them asunder. But J.D. Vance advocating for American values on the world stage, not something even remotely worth him looking into.
But the idea that in Germany, they can knock on your door because you insulted somebody. And they use the example of Pimmel.
What?
Yes, I said it.
What'd you say? Pimmel?
Pimmel. Apparently it's the German word for calling somebody a dick.
Oh.
And you can get arrested for that, or they'll take your phone.
So Bill Maher brings up that an insult that is super common that you could throw around in the United States of America, if you insult somebody on social media, not only can you be arrested for it in the nation of Germany, but as a consequence, you could lose your right to have a smartphone. And if you don't believe me, here's it from the 60 Minutes piece.
It's 6:01 on a Tuesday morning, and we were with state police as they raided this apartment in northwest Germany. Inside, 6 armed officers searched a suspect's home, then seized his laptop and cell phone. Prosecutors say those electronics may have been used to commit a crime. The crime, posting a racist cartoon online. At the exact same time, across Germany, more than 50 similar raids played out. Part of what prosecutors say is a coordinated effort to curb online hate speech in Germany.
What's the typical reaction when the police show up at somebody's door and they say, hey, we believe you wrote this on the internet?
They say, in Germany we say, das wird man wohl doch mal sagen dürfen. So we are here with crimes of talking, posting on internet, and the people are surprised that this is really illegal to post these kind of words.
They don't think it was illegal?
No, they don't think it was illegal. And they say, no, that's my free speech. And we say, no, yeah, free speech as well, but it is also has its limits.
The German Constitution protects free speech, but not hate speech. And here's where it gets tricky. German law prohibits any speech that could incite hatred or is deemed insulting.
It's illegal to display Nazi symbolism, a swastika, or deny the Holocaust. That's clear. Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes.
It is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher
Yeah.
if you insult someone in the internet.
Why?
Because in internet, it stays there. If we are talking here face to face, you insult me, I insult you, okay, finish. But if you in the internet, if I insult you or a politician,
That sticks around forever.
yeah.
The prosecutors explain German law also prohibits the spread of malicious gossip, violent threats, and fake quotes.
Now, obviously, this is horrible, this is ridiculous, this is authoritarian, but this is what you get when you don't have a First Amendment in your Constitution. This is what you get when you don't have real freedom of speech protections. This is what you get when you have hate speech laws that are allowed to be put on the books in your country. This is obviously concerning, and this is what J.D. Vance was talking about. This is what he was referencing referencing, and this is where Bill Maher is giving him credit while at the same time undercutting him. And honestly, some of the reasons why he's undercutting him are completely valid. Like, I cut it out, but he did mention Trump suing the Ann Seltzer poll, which is ridiculous. I'm sorry for the Trump people out there, but somebody putting out a bad poll in an election you won is not something worth suing over. And of course, the dispute over 60 Minutes, which again, people said that could be related to the FCC and maybe there's governing jurisdiction for that agency over that. But this is not an issue where he needs to sue them again for an election that he won. Also, I saw Kamala Harris's full answer to that question. It wasn't good either way.
And the UK also has arrested, I think, people for just insulting, basically, or like Islamophobia. Well, you know, one person's Islamophobia is another person's just talking plainly and honestly about Islam.
So Bill Maher ends up bringing up the fact that in the UK, you can be punished for criticizing Islam. Essentially, they have imported blasphemy laws specifically for Islam into the United Kingdom, which is ridiculous, absurd in every possible way. And again, the United Kingdom doesn't technically have freedom of religion the way that the United States does. There is a Church of England. It is the official church of that country. However, you would think in a Western, broader context that they would have freedom of religion, which includes the right to criticize religion. But of course, because Islamophobia is a term deliberately invented in order to crush dissent against Islam, they're able to label stuff bigotry, they're able to label stuff Islamophobia, and thus have people arrested. I mean, there's all these different various memes of people getting arrested for committing terrorism, you know, for driving a truck into a bunch of different people, and then there's a guy in jail next to him, and they ask, what did you do? The terrorist says, I committed an act of terrorism, and the guy next to him says, I insulted him, because that's something that actually happens in the UK. There are people who have gotten longer sentences for insulting people who assaulted children than the actual groomer / molester ended up getting for doing the actual crime. It's absolute madness. It's completely unacceptable. But I'm sorry, if you're not able to function in a modern Western country, the modern Western country shouldn't change its laws to cater to you. You should go back to your theocracy in the Middle East, have a great time, stop mooching off the British and German and European taxpayers. But apparently in Europe and in the UK, they've decided to go the complete opposite direction.
Well, you know, one person's Islamophobia is another person's just talking plainly and honestly about Islam. Can I not do that? If I have any critique of Islam, I saw you roll your eyes. Really, there's no.
I didn't roll my eyes.
Oh, okay.
I'm more thinking. Well, just like we're not in Germany. We're here.
I know.
They have their problems, famously.
Right, but we don't care about other people's problems, and sometimes they don't. Those problems don't come here. We should
but it's more
comment on
no,
them.
no, of course. But I guess I just like, you know. We have a lot of problems in America. We got the vice president going to Europe to complain about sort of German social dynamics, and it's like, okay, I mean, this is about a larger project of the right.
Free speech is kind of a big thing, and it should be to you especially.
Of course.
So again, this guy decides that he's going to roll his eyes when Bill Maher is saying that one person's Islamophobia is another person's speaking honestly and frankly about Islam, and then he says, we're not in Germany, and Bill Maher presses him on the issue, and he says, wait, so we don't care about anything that happens in the world? Funny how that works with the left wing. Whenever you're criticizing something that they actually support, it's who cares? That's over there. That's their problem. But whenever you're talking about how you don't want to be involved with certain things, like let's say you don't want to be involved in funding the Ukrainians, they say, oh no, we're on the world stage and blah, blah, blah. And we definitely should be in that situation. If you say you don't care about the Palestinian cause or Gaza, that's their problem. They keep attacking the nation of Israel. They say, oh no, you have to care. Humanitarian reasons. You say you don't care about where U.S. aid sends foreign aid. They say, oh no, you don't care hard enough. You're a terrible person. We're citizens of the world. But when the issue is freedom of speech, a fundamental American value that we should, by the way, spread on the world stage, since we're the longest standing functioning government based on a constitution, based on a Bill of Rights, this guy rolls his eyes and he doesn't care. He's like, that's Germany. That's over there. And the reason why is because he's in favor of this censorship. He's in favor of those hate speech laws. That's where the modern Democratic Party is. And if you don't believe me, look at the polling of the young people that are left wing on this issue. They think hate speech should be made illegal.
You know, we have a lot of problems in America. We got the vice president going to Europe to complain about sort of German social dynamics, and it's like, okay, I mean, this is about a larger project of the right.
Free speech is kind of a big thing, and it should be to you especially.
Of course.
Again, this is the first step right here in the breakdown between Bill Maher and this guy. He just labeled freedom of speech, again, fundamental right, first in the Bill of Rights, a German social dynamic. It has nothing to do with the United States of America. It has nothing to do with the broader value. And Bill Maher pushes back because he realizes who he's engaging with right in this moment, not later on when they get to the transes, but right here. This is the groundwork laid for him to walk off the show later on.
You're living doing
Of course. But as you said, these are people that are right now in our own country attacking free speech every day. So I take it a bit disingenuously when J.D. Vance is in Germany.
I just said that.
I know. I agree with you.
Yeah,
That's why I'm rolling my eyes.
Okay.
I'm rolling my eyes at the situation, Bill.
Okay. But hey, look, I'm not trying to be a pimmel.
Pimmel over here. Huh?
But I mean, that is chilling. That is very chilling. And it's funny because some of these places are, Canada, New Zealand, they have a woke quotient that exceeded ours.
So again, another tactic of the left when you bring up an issue is, one, they downplay it, which is what he did. He said, oh, German social dynamics, no big deal, nothing to worry about. And then they say, oh, well, you're disingenuous in bringing up this particular issue. You don't care about this. This is often brought up when people talk about the unfair advantage that biological males have when they're allowed to compete in female sports. They say, well, you don't watch the female sports in the first place, therefore, you have no say. They never point out that they don't watch any sports at all whatsoever. They're not informed on the issue. They just want to engineer society. That's why they're in favor of this particular policy. But again, it's to question your motives after downplaying doesn't work. And you can say, oh, J.D. Vance, not the best messenger for this or whatever, but the fact of the matter is, he is somebody on the world stage pushing American values, which in some contexts is totally okay when you have a D next to your name and you're not actually pushing a real American value. But in other contexts, when you have an R next to your name, so bad, so wrong, oh my god, evil white racism, and we should just say so what to hate speech laws and all that. And again, it's just ridiculous.
Put aside the specific of the issue. Joe Biden was for a two-state solution. Kamala Harris was for a two-state solution. Most mainstream Democrats are for a two-state solution. Donald Trump has embraced Benjamin Netanyahu and no two-state solution, no deal on the table.
I agree, but that's not what we were talking about.
But what I'm trying to understand is,
to always bring in Trump.
Well, I'm not trying to bring in Trump.
We're going to agree that we don't like Trump.
Then
I didn't
great.
vote for
Asked
him.
and answered.
Okay.
Asked and answered. But my question is,
but you're not addressing the question that you find more difficult to answer,
What is the
which is
question?
what I put to you. It's like the woke position, and it's, again, not just kids on campus. I could quote you things from, like, do you know who PEN is? The organization, PEN? It's a free speech organization that doesn't understand free speech. That same with the ACLU in some cases.
So Bill Maher ends up laying the groundwork right here for the fact that the Democratic politicians who he doesn't himself consider to be radical, like Joe Biden, considers them to be very mainstream and establishment, refuse to stand up to the far left elements, to the fringe elements.
Joe Biden, I think, never stood up to the far, far fringe of his party. From day one, he was just like too feeble, too old. These people are too mean, too powerful. I don't want to even have the fight.
What was something he did? But I'm not. What's something he did
like we are an outlier in the trans.
So let's talk about that
with other countries. I mean, the UK, the Nordic countries, all pulled back on that as far as like puberty blockers and operations for kids under 18, letting children self-diagnose, keeping it from parents. All this stuff has gone on and still goes on in America. If it's something like that and you're a parent, which I am not, and I'm glad I'm not, that issue is a lot closer to home to you than Ukraine.
And this guy says he agrees with what Bill's saying, even though he definitely doesn't, and he's prepared to fight back against Bill on all these different various issues, but he's saying, oh, you're slightly wrong, as a way to kind of get the camel's nose in the tent before the whole thing ends up spoiling your entire campsite.
I got to my card that says trans. Let's talk about it. The position, look, other countries have national health services. The Democratic position is leave it up to parents, doctors. Just leave. It's not the government's decision. That's the Democratic position. What's wrong with that position?
Wait, say that again?
The Democratic position, right? Joe Biden.
The Democratic position in this state has been that the school has the right to hide it from the parents. That is something that is not going to go well with the average voter. And again, I'm not even a parent, and I get it. Mm-hmm. Okay? I mean, I think the governor here used the word snitch. Now, if I'm wrong, I didn't say it.
So
I think I read that.
So this guy finally gets to his trans talking points and he says, look, the Democratic position is it's between the parents and their doctor and the government shouldn't be involved in it. And I got to give Bill Maher credit for not buying into this false premise because it's false in a number of ways. First and foremost, the state that they're in, the state of California, has a way more extreme position than they're laying out. Now, it's also really important for you to understand that this guy is in favor of California's law. He's going to explain it to you without affirming it directly because he's a coward, that he backs this law by his very next sentence. Let me play that for you so you can hear it for yourself.
So there are there are delicate problems here. But wait, there's delicate problems here. And there's a delicate problem where you have a kid, all right, who is either non-binary or trans, who feels scared at home, feels unsafe at home. Those things do happen in the world. There are things that happen in the world. But for the most part, that's not what we're talking about. For the most part, what we're talking about is a teenager who has felt that they are they have a gender dysmorphia. So what they feel like is that they feel deeply unhappy, depression, all really rampant.
Yes,
and they go to their parents.
They feel that, and then they blame it on the thing that has been put in their mind way too much. That it may be because of you're in the wrong body, to put it probably wrongly, but that we understand what that means. Okay.
Again, he's talking about, oh, well, they're scared of being at home and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, these are unfortunate situations and blah, blah, blah. That's why that exists. And that's not the majority of cases. Most of the time we're talking about teenagers. Again, he says that he's not that far apart from Bill. He thinks these issues are taking center stage. But whenever you press these people who say that the culture war issues aren't the real issues and we should focus on the economic messaging, 9 times out of 10, they back all the crazy social issues. This is why it's so disingenuous when you hear people do this.
When even a teenager and you're that confused about everything and you have no idea and you're upset for many other reasons, the idea that they put it, let me just finish.
I'm not saying it.
I know. I could see you were ready. I could see you pulling back the bow. And the fact that they put this in their head too much, that's my thing. Should you tell a kid, look, there's a default setting for humans, male and female, but there are variations. That's absolutely true. Some people are attracted to people of their own sex, and some people are actually in the quote-unquote wrong body, and that does happen. But the amount that they emphasize this, I compared it once on my show to entrapment.
So
see, there you go.
I disagree. I'm sorry, is that not the end? I thought entrapment had a period at the end.
Could I explain it?
Yes,
though?
explain. I mean, we all get it, but yeah, explain it. Entrapment.
So Bill Maher ends up going through his explanation. Obviously, he has an entrapment joke related to it, and this guy can't help but jump in and intervene because, again, these people have to defend those issues. This is how they get social credibility, and they're in favor of all the different radical policies. They are not at all whatsoever in favor of leaving it up to the parents. If the child disagrees with the parent and the child says that they're trans, they want the child taken away from the parents. He wants the California law where they hide these conditions from the parents. That's what he wants. That's what he's in favor of. Make no mistake about it. And that's why he's jumping in on the conversation, trying to shut Bill Maher up. And Bill is calling him out and basically saying that he's going to leave after this portion of the conversation.
There are a few examples of people getting older and realizing that they shouldn't have transitioned. That happens. It's real. That's real.
Yeah, more than a few.
But there are also really important surgeries that people get for their heart, and they go wrong, and somebody dies. And nobody says we must stop the cardiologists. No one says we must stop the surgeons. We say, let's...
That's your analogy?
Well, my analogy is only that... Wait, let me finish.
I'm just...
Can I finish?
Yes.
Is it my turn to talk?
No. You're right.
And what you say is, let's make sure that this version of it is being practiced well. We don't get rid of the specific surgery. We don't throw out a whole field of medicine. We say, let's make sure we're doing it in a way that's healthy.
So then it goes back to this guy, and notice he immediately tries to call out Bill Maher for interrupting, even though he was jumping in to interrupt and he just got called out for it. And his analogy is, it's like, oh, cardiac surgeries sometimes go wrong, and we don't say stop the cardiac surgery. Well, if you were doing a cosmetic cardiac surgery on an underage child that was totally unnecessary for them, like it didn't mean that they were going to live or die based on getting that procedure, we would stop the surgery. This is a terrible analogy. Again, assuming that you're going to have a cardiac surgery because it's going to lengthen your life and not having it will dramatically shorten and or end your life immediately, that's why we have them. And yes, there are upsides and downsides of that. But doing a double mastectomy on a 14-year-old girl is not something that is medically necessary. Again, unless they have breast cancer, rare cases, blah, blah, blah. Unless it is medically necessary, it's not medically necessary. And these are done for cosmetic reasons. These are irreversible procedures. And that's why you have all these different European countries pulling back when it comes to children.
The science, the research, all right, makes clear that, yes, there are exceptions. Yes, there are people practicing it in ways that maybe go too far. But for the most part, study after study shows that gender-affirming care saves... Wait, I'm talking. It's my turn. I was so quiet for so long after I interrupted a few times.
But okay.
But once I stopped talking, boy, I was good at it. And that gender-affirming care saves a lot of lives.
So yeah, he does the science says this, even though that's just not true, and Bill Maher's going to address that later before he walks off. But I just want to point out that we should never concede language to these people. The pushback against cisgender or cis is a good thing culturally, but another thing that people should push back on is against the phrase gender-affirming care. It should be called, by the right, gender-reversing care, because what you're trying to do is reverse somebody's biological sex, or at least the outward manifestations of that. It is not gender affirming. You're doing the exact opposite, and we should not concede that language to them because, oh, gender affirming, that sounds good. That sounds swell. That sounds amazing, when in reality, nothing could be further from the truth. These are cosmetic procedures, which, by the way, if you're an adult, I do not care if you get at all whatsoever. You are allowed to take risks and make decisions that are good or bad for yourself for cosmetic purposes, but for children, no, absolutely not. Definitely not, especially when we understand all the different social pressures. And again, when it's trendy for certain parents in certain left-wing areas to have their kids be transes.
There is no perfect answer to this. It's as many naughty questions, the least bad answer.
And the least bad answer is to not have the government decide from above. It's just to leave it up to people and parents and the kids and the doctors, right? You want the government to ban gender-affirming care for kids?
You want to lose every election? Just keep coming down on the side of parents coming in second in a who gets to decide what goes on with my kid contest.
I'm not. First of all, you gotta go. That's good. That's it. You're just leaving.
Go. Yeah, I'm just leaving.
Bill Maher, everybody.
Thank you.
So right there, Bill Maher gives his closing point and then he walks off the show. Now, some people might interpret this as him running from the debate, but at a certain point in time, especially when you're as old as Bill Maher is, which, by the way, they end up talking about a lot throughout the course of the show, you realize that you're just wasting your time talking to somebody. This is what he was prepared for. He had his little cue card and he knew he was going to go at him with all the different virtue signaling points that are not backed up by reality. But this is, again, a perfect example of somebody who says, oh, the culture war issues aren't the real issues. We should focus on the economic issues, the bread and butter issues. But then you press them on the culture war issues, and what do you find out? They embrace all the radical positions that you're against, that you're concerned about. Because guess what? It doesn't matter your tax rate when they're taking control over your children and putting them through these crazy procedures. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias. This has been me talking about Bill Maher versus Pod Save America. Till next time.